The official history of our cities is written in stone, concrete, and clean timelines. But what if the most important chapter of that history isn't written at all? What if it's buried, literally, right beneath our feet? Across America, in cities big and small, old buildings reveal a strange secret. Windows swallowed by the ground, doors leading into solid soil, entire floors vanishing under earth as if the city was once buried alive. This story isn't about legends. It's about photographs, documents, evidence, and a mystery that mainstream history can't fully explain. Tonight, we dig. The mystery of buried buildings. If this were just one or two strange buildings, we could ignore it. But this phenomenon is everywhere. Old photographs from the late 1800s and early 1900s reveal something shocking. Not inches, not a couple of feet, but 5, 10, even 23 feet of soil pressed right against the walls of old American buildings. Imagine walking through a city where the first floor is actually an entire buried level, a whole floor hidden underground. The question is simple: how did this happen? But the answers? They're anything but simple.
5 questions official history can't fully answer. Let's break down the 5 big questions historians often avoid. 1. How deep were these buildings buried? Photos show entire floors swallowed, not gradually, but suddenly. 2. How were cities dug out? Millions of cubic yards of soil were removed in the 19th century without modern machinery. How? 3. Where did all the soil go? Millions of tons of dirt don't just vanish. 4. Why bother digging it out at all? Why not just build at the new ground level? 5. What force buried entire cities so quickly? Flood? Landslide? Something else? No official explanation answers all 5 questions at the same time. That's where our investigation begins.
Seattle, the surreal photographs. We start in Seattle. Old photographs from the early 1900s show scenes that look impossible. Buildings stand beside vertical cliffs of compacted soil, as if someone sliced the earth with a giant knife. In some photos, entire houses sit on top of giant earthen blocks, tilted, unstable, as if carved out of a massive frozen wave of dirt. These aren't ruins. They're ordinary buildings, sitting in an extraordinary landscape. It looks like the earth didn't fall down around them, but that the city broke through the soil, escaping from beneath it. Seattle's official explanation? Street regrading. But no street leveling project buries buildings 20 feet deep. Something far bigger happened here.
Kansas City, buried in the heart of America. If Seattle were the only city, maybe we'd blame the coast. But then comes Kansas City, a city 900 feet above sea level, thousands of miles from the ocean. And yet, the same thing happened here, but deeper. A famous 1867 photograph shows a massive stone building buried up to its roof. 2 entire floors swallowed by earth. This wasn't erosion. It wasn't a landslide. It wasn't a flood. Whatever buried Kansas City happened with speed and on a scale we can barely imagine. But how? And more importantly, why?
The machinery that fought the earth. To understand the burial, we need to understand the excavation. Engineers didn't just send workers with shovels. No, they turned the cities into giant industrial battlefields. Steam shovels, massive steel machines,
were rolled into downtown streets on temporary railroad tracks. Imagine a train parked on Main Street, its cars being filled with earth, scoop by scoop. Conveyor belts stretched across city blocks, moving dirt like an assembly line. At the waterfront, enormous barges waited so they could dump the soil into the sea. This wasn't a cleanup. This was a full-scale war against the earth. And yet, something stranger was happening.
The water cannons and strange soil. In many photographs, workers use powerful hoses, shooting water at walls of soil. Official explanation: to keep the dust down. But that makes no sense. Sometimes the hoses appear without any machinery. Other times, massive water jets are used where dust wasn't even possible. It wasn't dust control. It was thawing. Exactly like how gold miners in Alaska thawed permafrost, frozen soil filled with ice and debris, using high-pressure water jets. Why would Seattle need to thaw frozen earth? What kind of soil was this? And how did it get there? This unlocks our first major hypothesis.
Hypothesis 1. The ice tsunami. What if the glacial hills Seattle engineers described were not thousands of years old, but only a couple hundred? What if the Pacific Northwest was struck by a massive ice tsunami? Not a wave of water and frozen material, the need for hydraulic monitors, the term glacial hills, the surreal photographs. But this theory collapses in one place, Kansas City. No ice tsunami could ever reach it, which leads us to the second and equally powerful explanation.
Hypothesis 2. The Great Continental Sand Burial. The landscape in early Kansas City photos is strange, wavy, rolling, like underwater dunes or desert dunes frozen in motion. And there's something else missing. Old trees. Not one. The land looks recently stripped, bare, exposed. This suggests something massive happened. Imagine the Dust Bowl of the 1930s. Now multiply it by 10. Endless sandstorms. Not for days, but for years. Wind strong enough to lift entire landscapes and bury towns in slow-motion waves of dust. Buildings wouldn't collapse, they'd simply disappear under drifting earth. Just like houses today in the Russian Arctic village of Shoina being swallowed by sand. This perfectly explains Kansas City. But here's the real twist.
2 catastrophes, 1 global trigger. We now have 2 different mechanisms: ice plus mud burial on the coasts, dust plus sand burial in the continental interior. Separate events? Probably not. More likely, they were symptoms of one massive globe-changing event 150 to 200 years ago. Something powerful enough to disturb the oceans, shake glaciers loose, trigger megastorms across the continent, strip soil from entire regions, and bury multiple American cities in different ways. Possible triggers? A large asteroid impact, a chain of supervolcano eruptions, a sudden climate collapse, a global temperature shock, massive seismic shifts across the continent. We don't know, because this chapter was never written. Maybe it was forgotten. Maybe it was erased. But the evidence? It's still there. In photographs, in foundations, in buildings with buried first floors, and in the earth beneath our streets. Closing. What began as a simple question, why are these windows underground, has led us into a forgotten chapter of American history. A chapter where cities weren't built. They were dug out.
a chapter where soil came not from centuries, but from catastrophe. We may never know the full truth, but the clues are still there, in brick, in stone, in dirt. Hidden not in ancient ruins, but right beneath our feet. And someday, when we dig a little deeper, we might uncover the answer the world has been missing. Friends, how was the story? I hope you enjoyed it. If you really liked it, don't forget to hit the like button, drop a comment, and subscribe to the channel. And make sure to turn on the bell icon so you'll be the very first to get the next video as soon as it drops tonight. That's all for now. Stay well, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video.